This episode is sponsored by Realtor.com, who wants you to take advantage of your free profile on Realtor.com. By claiming and completing your free profile, adding a photo, and all of the information that puts you head and shoulders above the competition, you're on your way to receiving free leads, helping search engines find you, and staying top of mind with past clients. To learn more about claiming your free profile, go to Realtor.com/profile.
Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Real View podcast. I am your host, Allison Wiley. Joining me today, our special guest is Christine George. She is co-founder of Post and Beam Creative, a real estate branding and marketing strategy firm. And I was just telling Christine before we started recording that I love branding. I love marketing. This is my wheelhouse. This is my arena. This is what I do in my day job, in addition to hosting the podcast. So this is really going to be a great conversation today. So Christine, welcome onto the show. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Allison. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I feel like I've known you for 100 years already. We can get it right off.
I love that. And same. It's always great when you start these recordings and you can tell the energy is good and there's a good vibe and good energy going. So I feel 100%. That already. Yeah. Going to be a good show. But before we dive into brand identity in the world of real estate and what it means, I would like to hear a little bit more about you, Christine. Could you tell us about yourself? Tell us about how you got started in this world of real estate and branding and marketing, and a little bit about the work that you do at Post and Beam.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a 30-year marketer. I've been in a marketing sales and marketing role since I got out of college back in the early 90s. I worked the first half of my career in consumer products goods. So I worked for big companies like Nestle and Gillette. And that's kind of where I got my chops. You know, I really learned the business cross-functionally, and it was really the best way to understand not only marketing, but business in general. And then I made the switch to real estate in 2008, like right when the crash was happening and all the craziness was happening. And I went to work for RE/MAX, and I was specifically working in the New England market, and I oversaw all of the marketing, promotions, events, training, and education for RE/MAX of New England. I did that for 7 years, and I just became addicted to the real estate space. And I think anybody who's in our space knows that once you've worked here, it's really hard to let it go. Like it just kind of gets into your bones. And so I have developed a real love for real estate brokers, teams, agents. I have a great appreciation for the hard work that they do every day. And so my goal is to help everyone that I can grow their business in a really authentic way. So after I left RE/MAX, I actually went to a local broker. And so I really got into the weeds with the brokerage and the agents and really got to understand like what it was that they were up against day in and day out until I broke away and started Post and Beam. And we help agents and brokers, lenders, business coaches, anybody who serves in the real estate space. We help them grow their business. And so it's just what I love to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. How was it founding your own business? And I know you did it with a partner. Tell me a little bit about what that was like and what made you decide to want to do that. And what was it like kind of starting your own business? I'm sure it was stressful. I'm sure a lot went into it. So tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, exciting and scary all at the same time. But sort of like I alluded to in the beginning, I feel like I got the real estate bug, that entrepreneurial bug. Like I saw both the challenges and the rewards of being an entrepreneur. And I just decided, along with my business partner, that this was something that I knew that I could do. I got to a place where I really wanted to take my knowledge and my experience and the results that I knew that I had brought to other agents outside of just the Boston market, which is where I'm located. I wanted to be able to take it nationwide. And I finally just got the gumption and the confidence to say, hey, I know I can do this. And so with the support of my husband, I was able to break away and start the business. And it's been really awesome. Like we're having a lot of success. And so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And congratulations. Sometimes you just gotta take that leap. And it sounds like, what's really cool is you get to do the two things you love, which is real estate plus the marketing aspect of it and kind of combine the two. And that's really where you see that magic happen is when you can combine those two passions together. And it sounds like you've been able to do that.
Yeah. And I think, while I've never been a real estate agent, although I am licensed, but while I've never sold as an agent, I'm still an entrepreneur. So I have to go out there and hustle and get business and then execute in a hopefully flawless way for my clients. And so it's the same process, right? It's the same. You need to prospect, you need to build relationships, and you need to do a good job for the people that you're serving. So it's the same thing as what an agent does. And so, I think that gives me credibility, within the space.
Yeah, I love that. It definitely is kind of the same sort of workflow, the same way of doing business. As we know, realtors are entrepreneurs. You're an entrepreneur. All the same vibes, when you're going out there and working on your own business and having to hustle. So, yeah, I really, really like that, the symmetry between that and the real estate industry. So I want to talk a little bit about your approach to the brand identity process. 1.5 million agents in the US. I mean, that's a lot of us, right? So we have to find a way to make ourselves the best and brightest. We have to find a way to stand out in the 1.5 million realtor crowd that's out there. Tell me a little bit about your approach to brand identity and how you guys view that in your perspective.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So you're right on 1.5 million realtors in the US. Everybody's singing the same song. Everybody is blending in. It's like, how do you differentiate yourself? And so I think my belief is that the best way to do that is by being your authentic self. And so, how do you be your authentic self? And the best way to do that is, well, what we really like to do is when we're working with a client, I guess I'll sort of position it this way. When we're working with a client, we go through an entire discovery process. Like, we don't just build a logo. We go through a discovery process where I will interview the agent, or if it's a brokerage, like we're working with a brokerage right now, I'm not only interviewing the owners of the brokerage, but I'm interviewing, some of their agents as well. I want to go deep and really understand who they are as people and professionals. Both are really important because at the end of the day, you're transacting real estate. And the thing that makes you different, your superpower is you. It's your DNA, right? It's nobody can be or say or do the things that you do the way that you do it. And so that discovery process allows me to really dig into that and pull that out of my client. And in doing that, then we can go to the creative process and say, okay, well, this person represents the outdoors, let's say, loves to bike, loves to hike. Well, let's take Pam Blair, for example. We were talking about her earlier before we started recording. She's a great example because she has a love for the outdoors. She loves to hike. She loves her dogs. She's also a yoga teacher. And what Pam does really well is she draws on all of those things to support her real estate business. So, for example, you will see on Instagram that Pam will be on the top of a mountain every single week giving you the real estate report for Portland, Oregon. That's a great example of taking the essence of who Pam is and connecting it to her real estate business. And so that's what we do at Post and Beam and that's my approach is let's really get to the heart of who you are and then make that come to life, not only visually, but in your marketing strategy as well. One other thing I just wanted to say is I hear a lot from real estate agents, God, I'm being told I have to cold call. I just don't want to cold call. I don't want to make the calls. It's just not me. It doesn't feel good. I get it. Like, there are very few people who can be successful cold calling. I know a couple, but most of us just don't want to do it. And let's face it, we're not in the environment where that's acceptable anymore. Certainly millennials and Gen Zs aren't going to pick up the phone. They just don't. So I really encourage, and part of this discovery process is getting the agent to really understanding, like, what is it that brings you joy and passion? And then let's use those things to drive your real estate business. Let's not make cold calls if that's not who you are. Let's have first-time home buyer seminars, or in the case of Pam, let's do a bonanza event in the local park where you can bring your dog and do yoga together. Like whatever it is, do the things that bring you joy and that are uniquely you.
I think when you do that, it comes across so genuine and natural. And I think that's what can draw people to you and to want to work with you, is when they see you happy and living your passion and doing what you love. That comes across in just such a real and genuine way. And I think can really pull people in.
100%.
This episode of The Real View is brought to you by the Ohio Association of Community Colleges. Ohio's network of community colleges provides accessible training that accommodates the busy lifestyles of aspiring real estate professionals at half the price of a traditional university. With convenient locations in every part of the state, as well as online options, Ohio's community colleges are your smart choice for pre-licensing education. For more details or to start the journey to a real estate career, visit the education page at ohiorealtors.org and then click on the pre-license course locations.
Yeah, so no, I think that that's really a really great approach. It's something that we have seen Pam be successful about. And you guys know she joined me for an episode a few weeks ago, so definitely tune in and listen to that. And you can hear a little bit more as Christine talks about her approach and the way she infuses her love of her passion into her real estate business. So really great example, and I think something that you found to be a success. To Christine, I want to talk about just the landscape and where we are in the industry right now. We know the settlement happened. We know that we are going to have to put more of an emphasis on explaining our value, having those conversations with our clients about the importance of working with a realtor. How are you kind of incorporating some of this into your business? Is your strategy changing at all, or what have you found that's coming out of this settlement news as far as branding and our identity?
I think we actually have to double down on our approach because it's more important than ever before to be able to communicate your value to not just buyers, but sellers too, prospective clients, no matter who they are. And your value isn't, hey, I've won 1 million awards and, I've transacted a bunch of business and, I'm the expert that you need to lean in on. The value is sitting in front of a client and saying, how can I help you today? What kinds of things are you afraid of? What things are holding you back? What don't you understand? I mean, that is really the value that you bring. And I think it's sort of the difference between operating from a place of abundance and a place of scarcity. And when you're operating from a place of scarcity, you feel this need to close the deal or to make sure that you get that listing agreement signed or that buyer agreement signed. And if you don't, you're essentially not going to eat, right? Like you're not going to make the money. And that comes through, right? That comes through because you're talking at the client. But when you come from a place of abundance, you approach the client with much more compassion, with the concept of active listening and solving their problem versus closing the deal. And the client then feels cared for. And when somebody feels cared for, they're willing to pay you whatever your fee is. I really, truly believe that. And then the money comes. And so it's really a mind shift change. And I know that agents are going to need education on how to get those buyer agreements signed. And that is one way. Active listening, coming from a place of abundance, choosing to solve the problem versus forcing your process down their throat.
Yeah. And it goes back to kind of that genuineness. It goes back to being genuine. And I think when you work with clients and just human beings in general, they can sense that, they can feel that. And the more genuine that you're being and you're coming across, as I'm caring for you, I'm not just out here to get my commission check and move on to the next deal. They're going to feel that, and they're going to, that's going to draw them to you or draw them away from you. I think it could kind of go both ways. So bringing in your true authentic self, as you said, and just coming across genuine and real is really, I think, a good approach to take, when it comes to working with this.
Yeah. I mean, Allison, think about it. This is like the biggest investment of your life for most people. You're trading someone's largest asset. And on top of that, that asset is a place, it's a sanctuary. It's a place where memories are made. It's a place where milestones happen. So there's a huge emotional attachment to it. And so you have to approach that with compassion and understanding. It's like a doctor. Doctors could treat you like you're just a number, and that's not great bedside manner. It's like you want to have the bedside manner that makes the client feel like they're the only one.
Yep, definitely. And we were just, we're at some meetings earlier this week with some of our members, and we were getting into this conversation and talking about with the lawsuits and the value of a realtor, is that going to change? Are we going to get replaced by a Zillow? And one of our members stood up, and shout out to Tiffany Meyer, if she's listening to this. She stood up and said, no, because we are the emotional therapists sometimes. There is such that emotional component that Zillow is not going to be able to sit there and hold your hand as you break down because you're selling your house because of a divorce, or because there was a death in the family, or because you're downsizing because you're now empty nesters. There is that huge emotional side of this that Zillow is not going to be able to replace, that human connection and human emotion side of things. And I just thought that was really, really a good point, and something that, we all can lean into, is being that emotional supporter, that emotional advisor through such an intense and crazy process, many times.
Yeah, you're right. That's the other thing. It's not an easy process. There's a lot of complications and a lot of road bumps along the way.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to kind of go back to how we can make ourselves stand out. And you talked a little bit about finding our identity and how, you start there. So after we've kind of found that and feel good with who we are, kind of how do you move that into the next process? How do you move that into building a brand off of that?
Yeah. So the next thing we do and this is really important and can be controversial, is we identify who our ideal customer is. Now, you can go anywhere and people will say how important that is. I'm here to tell you that it is critically important with real estate professionals. Whether you love working with first-time home buyers or downsizers or investment buyers or second home buyers or whoever it might be, it's really important to hone in and focus on who that ideal customer is. And then everything that you do to support your business should focus on that ideal customer, right? And so I have a lot of agents who will come to me and say, again, it's like that scarcity mindset, right? It's like, oh, but what if I really want to be a listing agent and I want to focus on, trade up people who want to trade up to a larger home. That way I'll get the buy side and the sell side. But what if a first-time home buyer comes into my space? Do I say no? And the answer is no, you absolutely take that first-time home buyer if you have time for them, right? You're more apt to get more business when you focus on your ideal customer than you are to lose business. And so what you're actually doing is it's kind of like the marketing strategy. You lean into the things that you love. You also lean into the people that you love to work with because that'll bring you more joy in your business. It'll also make you more profitable and it'll help you scale and become more efficient. And you're always going to have that sphere of influence that's going to bring you referral business, right? Like that's what we're all about in this space. But you also can't forget to prospect. And when you're out there prospecting, you want to focus all of your energy on that ideal client, that person you want to attract. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that's something that you guys walk through with your client, like how to identify that, how to work that into your business plan and your business strategy. Is there a way that you kind of recommend finding that ideal client, or what should our realtors be thinking about as they think about, who they want their target audience to be?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you always want to think about, well, where do they live? What do they like to do? How do they communicate? Where do they spend their time? So, for example, we have a client who focuses on downsizers, and she specifically loves the downsizers that are like just have a ton, like, well, most of them do, right? They accumulate over 20, 30 years, tons of stuff. And she really specializes in helping them decipher all of that. Like, what do I keep? What do I sell? What do I give away? What do I trash? Like, she helps them organize all of that. And so, what she's doing specifically to attract that customer is she has a whole direct mail campaign that's focused, targeted on that client. She runs seller seminars on a monthly basis, and she targets, a very specific zip code within that segment of sellers. She's SRES designated. So she's a senior specialist. And in the community, she's involved in a number of community organizations where that target profile are also involved. And so that's a very specific strategy for focusing in on that client. And it just allows her to just be really focused and not have to think about, oh my God, I have to be everything to all people, because when that happens, you're nothing to no one, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really great distinction to make because I think you mentioned it earlier. We're in the industry of we'll take business however we can get it. Whatever listing we can get, whatever client we can get, let's bring them on, let's get them in, let's work with them. But I think what you're explaining is this is almost a quality over quantity situation where let's work with the best people who fit you and fit the work you do and fit the services that you really excel at, instead of like what you said, just trying to do everything and be the best at everything when really you're being the best at nothing, when that happens.
Yes. And guess what, Allison? Over time, when you have really become skilled at focusing on this ideal customer, then you also become the expert in that market. And that's another way to help you stand out from everybody else.
Yeah, that's a great way to differentiate yourself, and when we're talking about how we can stick out in that crowd, be that expert, find your niche, find the thing that you're really good at and latch onto that and use that to kind of really excel and grow your business.
Yes.
If you had one bit of advice for a realtor just starting out, for a realtor who's maybe been in this for a while but isn't really sure how to grow or how to take their business to that next level, what is your bit of advice, or what would you share with them as we navigate this new landscape of real estate?
So, for new agents to the business, my biggest piece of advice is don't spend any money. Don't go out there and hire us to create a brand logo for you. Just don't do it. It's a waste of your money. Lean into your brokerage, learn as much as you can, get a mentor, and then drive your sphere of influence. Make sure everybody knows you're in the business. Take open houses whenever you can so that you can grab buyers. I mean, that's my biggest piece of advice. As a marketer and somebody who likes to spend money, I always tell new agents, I'm telling you, don't spend money. Lean into those relationships you already have and build new ones. For somebody who's in that space where they've been in the business for like 5 years, they've got some momentum, they have built a past client list, they're doing well, then I would say now it's time to really hone in on who you are. it takes 3 to 5 years to really understand who you love to work with and what you're really good at. So at that point, I would say, okay, let's figure out how we can strengthen the things you're already good at, how we can outsource the things that you don't like to do or that you're not good at. And then let's hone in on who that ideal customer is so that you can scale your marketing to really focus on attracting that business. That's my piece of advice there.
Yeah, and I think that was great. That's two really great pieces of advice, for these different stages that our realtors may find themselves in. And I think, going back to just what we said about it's more important now, maybe than ever, to start figuring this kind of stuff out.
Yes.
To start being able to understand and learn who you are and what your business is like. And that's really going to take us to the next level, I think. Once we figure this out, once we hone in on our skills and our expertise and our ideal client, I think that is a great way that we are going to be able to stick around and make it into the next era of real estate. So, Christine, I think this advice that you've shared today and your perspective, really fascinating and really a great discussion. So I want to thank you for your time and all of your insights and this amazing knowledge that you've shared with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and to all of our listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back with you soon.
Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.